Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heitland Show, where I interview experts from different fields to connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship. Today's guest is certified professional facilitator, founder and managing partner of Traction Strategy and Traction Toolbox. Together, we discover her story, how her grandfather impacted her innovative thinking. We talk in depth about the ideation and tools for innovators. And yes, we talk as well about her version of sticky notes and why you might not use them. Please welcome to the show, Tamara Eberle. Hello, Tamara. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey Jens, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to a fun conversation. I still remember when we chatted. What was it, last week or the week before?
Yeah,
We have had already fun in the pre-interview, so it's going to be fun, everyone.
we did. Yeah, the trick will be not talking too much.
Y- we we have time. Like I have the
Okay.
whole night.
You can just cut it out, cut things out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go into, of course, innovation, I want to talk about Traction Toolbox, ideation, and a lot of things in the innovation ecosystem with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so just a quick note on sort of who I am and what I do. So I'm actually in Vancouver, Canada, and I have a business called Traction Strategy, as well as a business called Traction Toolbox, with my business partner and sister, Shauna, and we're a professional facilitation and training company, and we specialize in things like strategy and creative problem solving and innovation and change. And we work with a lot of different clients, in particular in kind of the corporate sector. But how did I get here? It's kind of it's a great question, and I'll share, I guess, four little stories about how I got here. And it starts with my grandfather, and he was a machinist and he was an innovator. So he had several patents. He invented lots of things. He invented a lot of things to do with golf because he really loved golf. But he was also, in his time, he was an environmentalist as well. So he was focused on also inventing some things that had some positive environmental impact, and also things that just made our lives easier. So he had this machine shop, this workshop that was just like a magical place of
Mm.
creativity and experimentation and invention. And he had incredible skills. He had very, very little education. He grew up on the prairies, on a farm, and didn't get very far in his education, but he had incredible talent as a machinist and a creative thinker. So that's part of my origin story. But if we jump ahead to 1985, which is when I was in grade 7, which in Canada is the first year of high school. And
Mm.
I lived in a very small town. It was it's such a small town that if you drove by it, it was a bend in the road. And if you blinked, you would miss it. So in that town, I went to this high school, which was a very, very small high school. But even then, in the mid 80s, there was a teacher in this school who, when I look back on it, must have really been kind of pushing the boundaries and testing the waters in that school, because he brought in a class called critical thinking. And this was offered as kind of an elective class, but I thought, well, that sounds kind of, I'm curious. That sounds interesting. And I took it. There were only 3 of us in that class. So we all sat around. In fact, I think the class was held in a science lab. And so we all sort of sat around on these big stools around this little table together, the 3 of us and the teacher, and went through a year of learning about critical thinking. And we did everything. But one of the most important kind of, I guess, outcomes of that was that he introduced us to Edward de Bono. and lateral thinking. And I've never forgotten that. And I think it had more of an impact on me as I went through my schooling than I sort of would have realized at the time. Fast forward again, I'm in university and I choose to take sociology and psychology. I could not decide. I ended up doing psychology, but you took a lot of psych courses. Very interested in group dynamics and how people work together and think together, and also really interested in how we think, how the brain works, and how we interpret the world and how we make choices and decisions. So psychology and sociology were always really keen interests for me. Jump ahead one more time, and I'm in my early career years, and I'm very interested in conflict resolution. I wanted to save the world. I think I still do, but you know, I've changed my expectations around that might have been altered a little bit, tempered a little bit. But really, I was very interested in how to help individuals in particular through conflict resolution. So I started down that journey of taking courses and studying dispute resolution programming. And in that process, someone said, "Oh, you should try facilitation. It is also a great way to help groups of people move through challenges, whether it's conflict or other things." So I started that path and just never got off. Right. So that led me into the world of facilitation, which I've been in now for over 20 years as a professional facilitator. So all of those things together have kind of culminated in who I am and where I am today, which is helping groups of people to be creative and solve problems, and also making the tools, back to Grandpa's workshop, making the tools to support that process.
Awesome. A lot of interesting topics. Before we go into innovation, I would love to dig a little deeper. Critical thinking and 3 kids in one room. It's like, how does that work in a school that you have only 3 kids? Was it only 5 kids in one class, or how did you end up just being 3 kids?
You know, most of the other classes were sort of normal sized classes with 20 kids.
Yeah.
But we were the only 3 who were interested. And, you know, it wasn't a thing. It was not part of the curriculum. It
Mm.
was, you know, again, small town, you know, small school. We're in the 80s. This was really something that this teacher brought to the table. And I have no idea if that class continued afterwards. But yeah, they just let the 3 of us go to it, and we did all kinds of really interesting projects. And yeah, I really I remember it quite vividly because it was so different at the time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
But you know, now the province that town was in, now the school board and the education system of that province now has creative and critical thinking embedded in the curriculum as required learning.
That's
So that's
awesome.
kind of cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm not in Germany anymore, but I wish we have had something like that in Germany when I was in
Mm.
school, which was in
Hmm.
the 80s as well.
Yeah.
And another question, jumping completely into all sides, because I just have written it down and I want to ask it. Doing business with your sister, one thing is, how did you end up working with your sister? And on the other hand, the next one on top of that is, how does it work? Because I have an older brother and a younger sister, and I can't imagine. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, it's funny you say that, Jens. I do hear people say that a lot. However, let me go back in time again. So Shauna and I, in terms of like when did we start working together and how do we start working together? Well, our whole lives, right? We're incredibly close. We're very close in age. And we grew up as each other's playmates, but also, I mean, even when we were young kids in elementary school, we were creating businesses. So we had the Cowgirl Cafe, and we had menus, and we served spaghetti for dinner, and we were always each other's creative friend, and we helped stimulate each other's imagination, right? So we were, as kids, of course, we grew up at a time, as I think you did too, where TV was sort of the thing you watched from 5 to 5:30, if you even had one. And the rest of the time, oh, guess what? You actually had to use your imagination as a child to create new worlds and to create playful places and spaces. And we did that really well, and together. And so we kind of formed a creative partnership early in our lives. And so the idea of working together, being in business together, it is such a natural fit for us. The other thing is that we have distinctly different skill sets, and we bring something different to the table. So while I might be, the one who's in front of the group, Shauna is like absolutely phenomenal at kind of that one-on-one connection, and she's she's an observer, and so she sees everything, and she's got really good insights into dynamics of groups from watching them. But the other thing is, she's an artist, a professional photographer, and she's a designer. So she does a lot of the game and tool design work in our practice together, and is really, really good at it. So we both bring something different, and I think that's really important. I mean, if we're talking about innovation or creative problem solving or creativity, I mean, one of the things that we always encourage our clients to do is bring other people into the room, right? So get people into your space who have another perspective to bring to the table. So we've even had, clients where we've said, look, if you're going to do an innovation session, you should bring some artists in, or you should bring an architect in, even though you work in retail. Like, just bring in other people who can think differently. So I think that is kind of the glue that holds us together.
Fascinating. I can't imagine that. I'm living on such a different planet compared to my siblings.
Well, we have other siblings as well. And
Okay.
but let me be clear. Even though we don't work with them, we love them dearly. And I feel like one of the luckiest people in the world that I have siblings that I like every single one of them. And they're all creative people. But her and I are the only two that are actually in business together.
Yeah. No, I like my siblings as well, but I can't just imagine working with them. Like
Yeah.
same with like my wife and so on. But let's move to more important topics. So critical thinking, I just jumped outside of that because it was an idea, but critical thinking, how did that set you up for the future? Being in this class, being exposed to critical thinking in such an early age, how did this set up for the future,
Mm.
for what you do today, or any other exciting things you have seen differently, work with differently than most probably anyone else who wasn't in that class?
So I think one of the things that critical thinking can offer all of us is that uh, it allows us to test assumptions. And one of the things, I mean, I grew up with a mom who always said, if something is dominant, ask why. Right. So I already had a little bit of that seed planted with her, like that kind of mindset, if you will, to look at the world, and, and look at what you're hearing, or consider what you're hearing, and look at the world in kind of a critical way. And critical doesn't mean judgmental. Critical is, to be thoughtful about it, to consider, the where things came from, why is it there, is it, who does it benefit? These are, of course, good kind of critical thinking questions. And so I think having that critical thinking class, or having a critical thinking mindset, allows any of us to um, think twice about the world around us, see things in new ways, gain new perspectives, and also to make strategic choices as well.
Mm.
And I think that, you know, being able to think critically has also allowed me to think critically about my own profession, or even about the work that I do, and question myself or the things that are dominant within the scope of my world and my work, like facilitation, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
If we use facilitation as a point to hook us into professional facilitator, I have facilitated workshops in the past and still do. I'm most
Mm.
probably on a completely different level, but what is specific as a professional facilitator that, like, others who have not learned this are not professionals? What is the difference, and what are you doing differently most probably than others?
Uh, okay, well, um, so professional, there's, I guess you could look at it in a couple of ways, in terms of if we take the word professional, and what does that mean? So one is it's an actual accreditation, right? So you can actually receive an accreditation, going through a certain process that you are, that it's your designation. I am a certified professional facilitator, right?
Mm.
So in that sense, that's where the word professional fits in. And in my case, my certification, I have a couple of them, but one of my main ones, the certified professional facilitator, comes from the International Association of Facilitators. So you have to go through a very rigorous process and judging process and evidence-based process to demonstrate that you follow some key principles and ethics, and that have to do with inclusion and participation and your ability to design process and that sort of thing. Now, that aside, that's sort of the accredited side of it. But if you just take kind of maybe a small p, professional facilitator, you could also think of it as like, well, it's what I do. It's my active practice.
Mm.
It's the core thing in which I'm hired for as a professional. But the other kind of really important distinction for many people who call themselves professional facilitators is that you are focused on process, not content. So
Mm.
I am there to design process to serve the group and the group's needs. I am not there to tell the group what to do. I'm not a consultant, and I'm not a content expert,
Yeah.
even if I might have expertise in their field simply from being around those people or that industry for a long time. Like, there are industries that I do a lot of work in, and so therefore I'm familiar with. But that just
Mm.
means I can design more effective processes for them. It doesn't mean I'm there to uh, give them the answers per se. So it's the distinction between process and content.
Love that. It's similar to a coach who
Mm,
not necessarily needs to know the answer. It's more about asking the right questions. So you're helping them to understand through the process you guide them through to
yeah.
go get to a result that is helpful for them because they know the content.
Absolutely. And, one of the things a lot, people who call themselves professional facilitators or are sort of might characterize their purpose of their facilitation in different ways. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but for me, one of the things that I think I'm there for, that is my job in the room, is to help people think. And this goes
Mm.
back to like my interest in how we think. So one of the things that I really focus on is, am I able to help this group think in the way that is required of the task at hand? Okay, so is it that I need to help them think strategically, or is this a reflective exercise? Is this about critical, analytical, interpretive thinking? Is it decisional, or is it creative? So
Mm.
what is the type of thinking that is required in this moment? And I'm very interested in that. And I think that is a, a notable part of my kind of responsibility to the group is to help them think differently. And for me, that's a real driver in how I approach my work. And it's also been a driver um, for how we've been thinking ourselves about innovating again within the professional facilitation around tools that we use for creativity and innovation and stuff like that.
Yeah. So one of the things I have seen groups struggle with is ideation. What what is your view on ideation? What's going wrong? What's going right? Are there any specific tips and tricks you can give to people? Specifically, innovators are always interested in innovation. I was about to say, no, in ideation.
Ideation. Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on this one. So I think as you well know, and anyone who's listening in who is leads innovation processes or is part of them, there's so many different innovation models, right? Different whether it's design thinking or creative problem solving or TRIZ or whatever it is. In every single one of those models, there is a moment where the group or the individual is asked to generate ideas, right? So, what are some of the possible ways we can solve this problem? What are some of the potential solutions? How can we maximize these opportunities, right? So, whatever the question is, how can we make this product better? And it usually this follows the stages of research and discovery and kind of formulating what is the challenge or problem, like whatever your model is. You've spent some time discovering your key insights, and now you want to kind of solve using those. And I find that this moment is, and it's not across the board. I'm sure there's people who do this really brilliantly. Of course there is. But what I see a lot is that it's a weak spot in that process. We have
Mm,
a lot of tools and techniques and processes that are really robust around the other sides of the ideation process. So that whole discovery insights part, maybe you have do market research or whatever it is. And then the other side, which is the testing, the prototyping, the implementation, the reiteration pieces. We're pretty good at that, right? Not bad. But that moment where imagine you're in a room and you've got a group of people, and we work with all kinds of different companies, and you sit down with a team, and this group is not a group of like you know highly experienced innovation experts who spend all day innovating. This
mm,
is a group of people who do their job, whether it's leading teams or selling products or uh, um, running properties, and suddenly they're asked to be innovative. And we saw like about, I don't know, but you can tell me your thoughts on this, but I think it was maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I started to see a lot of companies were like, oh my God, innovation, innovation. They stopped asking for strategic planning and they started asking for innovative thinking processes. And it was kind of becoming a little bit more mainstream. And all of a sudden the values, teamwork, respect, all these things that the typical corporate values that they have on the wall, innovation went up there as well. We are going to be innovative. But there was nothing that was done to kind of truly foster and nurture the capacity for innovation or creative problem solving in the
mm,
organizations. So
mm.
then you walk into the room and there's the group and you're like, okay, everyone, we know what the problem is. What are your ideas? And they're like, crickets,
Yeah, or what my experience is that they come out, it's like they have, it's like a cupboard where they have all the ideas they have had the last 20 years and they will be put on the table.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's another tangent right there, which is the process of um, harvesting, if you will, ideas from across an organization and having a process that is truly effective
Oh yeah.
for bringing those ideas forward. I had a gentleman, he had been with the organization for like 40 years or something, and we did this process where his idea that he's had for 40 years finally got brought forward, and everyone thought it was brilliant. And he's like, why did this never happen before? Why is it only happening now, right? But then you get these crickets, and nobody is. Everyone says all the things, as you say, that are kind of the conventional responses. The ones that your competitors. It's a great test question. How easily would my competitor have come up with this idea? If your answer is just as easily as we just did, then maybe you want to go a little deeper, right? Or go a little
Yeah.
further. So what happens is, and I have a prop for you. What happens is in those ideation moments, it's like, there's some sticky notes on the table. Why don't you just write those ideas down on there, and then we're good to go? But the reality is that is not really truly going to provoke or inspire really different thinking. And so we need to pay a little more attention to that moment and how we do that. And that is a really interesting moment for me, because it's all about resetting our set minds and breaking psychological inertia.
Mhm.
And we can do it, but we just need to layer in a little bit extra effort in those moments.
Yeah. So how are you helping companies or groups to overcome this?
Well, number one, we get rid of these and
So
change
no
the
sticky notes.
no sticky notes.
But I love them.
Yes, yeah. But do you? I know, but that's part of. I'll help you. I have a support group for people who love sticky notes, but maybe need to let go of them.
So you get rid of sticky notes.
Yeah,
That's
but
number one.
it's more. It is more than that. And maybe I'll come back to this piece, because this has to do with getting rid of sticky notes. Has to do with innovating the way in which we do our work.
Yeah.
But as far as that piece around kind of helping to break the psychological inertia, which is a state of stuckness, right? It's when we are stuck in our own thinking, and we need to think in new ways. And there are neuroscientists who will say that one of the most useful ways to kind of break the psychological inertia, or to generate new and different ideas, is to actually introduce stimuli that we have not been exposed to before.
Hmm.
Okay, so what does that mean? So in practical terms, that can mean, for example, when we go traveling. And don't we all miss doing that, right? I mean, one of the ways that I always kind of fill my cup or get inspired is by traveling and going and seeing art, and being introduced to new cultures. And you have lots of global experience, so you have a lot of these data points, if you will, that you've collected over time from different places and spaces that are inspiring you, and that you can then kind of pull on. So we need to introduce new stimulus into people's thinking. And you can, if you can gather that externally. So you can encourage people to, for example, follow trends websites and just get inspiration. And it should be outside of their industry. They already know everything about their own industry. Get outside of your industry, right? So different industry innovations. Start when you go to a hotel, go do a tour of a craft brewery place and see what their systems and processes are. And just go in with an open, non-judgmental mind. You're not going there to say, well, they fixed their machine like this, so we can fix our machine like this. It's just about collecting different new stimulus and getting it into kind of your orbit or your
Mm.
universe, right? So you can go out and find it. You can read things. You can have guest speakers come in and from again from somewhere else or talking about a different topic. So you can bring all of that in to kind of get people um, going in new ways. However, the reality is most ideation moments, you don't have a lot of time to send people around the globe and go to cool art museums to get inspiration. So we have to introduce that in the room. And we can do that alternate stimuli. We can do that um, through things like different kinds of tools, creative thinking techniques that that are like real provocations and inspirations that help immediately start getting the group to think from a new perspective or step into a different set of shoes.
Yeah. If we dive deeper into the tools, one of the things you mentioned is like the traction toolbox,
Mm.
where you have built and designed tools or gather tools together. Can you give a little bit of insight of what that is, how you came about to do that, and as well how this can help innovators?
Mm. Yeah, 100%. So let's go back. Let's go back
The sticky note.
to these, and I'll tell you why. Where my aversion to these started, and how it led to the development of new and different tools, and not just the development, but also the the discovery and implementation of different tools from around the world into our work, which has transformed our work for sure. And but what happened was I walked into a room one day with a regular client, and we hadn't even started the workshop yet. And my client was sitting there already writing her ideas. Whoops. See, they don't even want to stay in my hand. I can't believe it. She was already writing her ideas onto the sticky notes. And we hadn't even started the session. We hadn't talked about the objectives for the session or what we were doing. And I thought, what am I doing here? How am I helping her? I
Yeah.
am not helping her think differently because, as you said, people come in and they're like, well, here's the ideas I came in with. I'm just going to write them here. And then somehow that process is done. But if you really want them to think in new ways, whatever the way is, we do need to kind of ditch the things that are ubiquitous or dominant and introduce a whole new environment and experience in the workshop space, right? And that
Mm.
itself will start to get people to think a little bit differently. This goes back to what I said about the critical thinking and that, looking at the world and saying, what in this world is dominant? And if it's dominant, um, why, to whose benefit, and how might we change that or create an alternate kind of experience? There are 50 billion sticky notes sold every year in 100 countries around the world. So if you Google creativity, collaboration,
Mm.
teamwork, innovation, what comes up? You're going to see a whole wall of images on your Google image search of
Yeah.
people standing around a wall or a table with sticky notes. And it has become so synonymous with our profession that there's actually been research done that shows that if you have a photo of people with sticky notes on your website, it naturally implies that you are into creativity. So when I
Mm.
see all of this and I see the dominance of it, I think, well, why don't we question this? And why don't we turn it upside down? And it is an innovation question because it's kind of like frugal innovation, where you say, what if we removed something? completely from this scenario, how would that help us be different? How would this help us solve this problem or create something completely new? So that's what we did. We said, we literally took all of our sticky notes, and at a 3-day strategy leadership retreat up in the mountains in Canada, our client and us took all the sticky notes in our toolkit and we threw them in the fire and burned them. And I did a post on it, and I had several people. Oh my God, how much money did you just burn? And you just don't understand sticky notes and how to use them. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I know they can be useful, but what if, right? What if we did something different? And then we began this sort of quest to say, okay, so what could we do differently, and what other tools are available? And of course, that was when we started this. It was at a time where we were traveling a lot more, and we do love to do that. And we met a lot of people who were doing really interesting work, educators, designers, game designers, all sorts of folks, people who specialized in innovation or other things like that. And they had created these tools that were different. So we started to use those, and we also started to design our own. And then when this pandemic business hit, we said, well, why don't we put our foot on the gas? We have this lovely curated collection of tools from around the world. What if we sort of actually put them all together and made them available to other people as well? So that's sort of how Traction Toolbox was born.
So there, if I understand you right, you're featuring your own tools, but also tools from other people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm not an expert in everything. The tools that we create tend to be the ones around sort of process tools like, dry erase storyboard cards or image cards, because Shauna's a brilliant photographer. But there's people who we've met who, they're experts in change leadership, or they're experts in innovation, or they're experts in operational excellence, in decision making. And these are folks we've met from Denmark, by the way. The Danes have been doing this for years. Like, hello, such a great export from Denmark is game-based tools, especially. But we have a partner she's in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We've got in Norway, Austria, Australia, and we've discovered these incredible people who have so much to offer and have created these just really beautiful tools that are, from our experience, really been very useful for working with the groups to get quality outcomes, and also to create a new experience for the groups as well.
Yeah. And funnily enough, we discovered this before we went into recording. Some of them have been even on the podcast already, so that's also fun connections.
Oh, which on your podcast with
like
with the
people
some of the people, yes.
Yeah. Not the tools itself, the people who have created them.
Yeah, like Ask and Dennis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and of course, for everyone who is interested into the Traction Toolbox, we will put a link into the show notes so you can straight away have a look at that. So,
and I've also, Jens, just to point out that I also have done a series of articles on LinkedIn, which, it's free for everyone to go and take a look, that show examples of like a 3-day strategy and leadership retreat without any sticky notes. And so what did we use? Right. And then and some of these things are not just tools in our toolbox. These are also just things you can buy at a stationery store, right? So, but it gives you a whole bunch of different examples and inspirations for, ways in which you can do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I will put the links as well in for people to find it. Awesome. So last time when we spoke, we talked about the online and the offline world of facilitation, and like because of pandemic, of course, a lot of things moved into the online world, and we discussed like the value of physical. What is your point of view on that one?
Oh, I really miss it. I do. I do. This has been it's been such an interesting situation to observe. And, I know um, facilitators and also other consultants who are saying they absolutely love it. They
Yeah,
love the virtual. They're never going back. They are quite happy in that space. They're like, wow, I don't have to travel anymore. I don't have to go anywhere. Um, I'm a I'm a very kinesthetic person, and I also know that my um, well, I think I'm better in the room.
yeah,
Really. I mean, we've done some really, really good work virtually because we've found kind of some nice platforms to work with. And I think it has to remain as an option, and we will always keep it as an option. But where there's the opportunity to do something in the room, I think we get a lot more out of it. It's not just about the processes itself, and it's even not about being able to actually touch physical tools and stuff, which I think has real value. But it's those little moments in between where people are connecting over lunch
yeah,
and people are connecting at the
yeah,
breaks, and you get more access to people's energy and body language. And yeah, I do miss it. But one of the things we've done to kind of blend those two worlds is, with some of the projects that we've done virtually, is we've sent people, I don't think we're the only ones who do this, by the way, but we've sent people physical toolboxes
yeah,
so that they have something in front of them. So, right, so they might have, I'm going the wrong way here. So okay, this actually undoes so it lays flat, and you can mail it to people, and then they can have, kind of put it together, and then you can say, okay, that has five critical thinking questions, by the way.
yeah,
Five critical thinking questions on it. As we're going through this process, feel free to grab your cube and look at a question. Well, you can
yeah.
present that in the chat box if you want, but this just gives, it helps people access all their senses as well. So yeah, so we try and do some things like that.
Yeah, but I agree. Being back in the physical world, at least since we moved to Spain 6 weeks ago, it's so
Yeah.
different. Being in the room with people and kind of feeling the energies is different than in a digital way. Definitely.
I actually think we can be more productive too. We had a chance to do three in-person workshops in December, kind of in between variants, which who knew we'd ever be talking about that? But
Yeah,
and at the end of one of them, we were like, "Oh my God, that's right. We can be so productive." We got
yeah.
so much. We got so much done. So yeah, of course, it's going to be a mixed world going forward, but it has each has a place.
Yeah. We'll
Hmm.
see how this goes.
Hmm.
So, anything we missed talking about before we go into the last part of the podcast? Just checking here.
Um,
I think we got everything.
yeah, I think
On,
I think we did
I'm
pretty.
just asking because
Yeah.
like sometimes I have four A4 pages now on notes. Like shit, there was something I missed.
I mean, if I could just say that, well, we have gone and collected tools or generated, through, as I said, those LinkedIn articles. We're always trying to think differently about how to create new and different kinds of experiences and outcomes for the group. We also love to hear what other people are
Mm,
doing. So if anyone wants to share with us through platforms like LinkedIn, we'd also love to hear your inspirations too. I think
yeah.
that's something we like to learn. And we're not out flying around the world discovering things right now, so this is one way we can continue to discover things.
So if you have any ideas um, or topics, inspirations, shoot them over to Tamara. Please do. So let's go into the last part. Questions I ask every guest.
All right.
If you can be part of a project, either leading it or just contributing, that is impacting every human being on Earth, what project would you choose and why? I know it's a very, very easy question.
Well, I guess this is tapping into my wanting to save the world. um, you know what immediately came to mind? So I guess I'll just riff off that is water and access to water. Um, and I think that this is more than fossil fuels and oil and gas. Water is the most precious resource, and I think that is going to. I think people already know that that is an issue for the future is access to fresh water, and making it fully and readily available to everyone in the world. I think
Hmm.
that's um, why not? I'll put that out there. Water.
Nice one. Nice one. How do you keep yourself up to date on topics that interest you?
Well, there's this great podcast by this guy named Jens, who I think is living in Spain. So that, I have a lot of coffee dates with people,
Huh.
and just to listen and learn, and I really actually try to meet with kind of the unusual suspects, because I think then I learn things that are unexpected, and it's not all about confirming things that I might already know.
Hmm.
But travel, and that will happen again. Definitely traveling and exploring new places and spaces is a really important way in which I learn things. Going to conferences and events, and not just facilitation conferences, right? But going to all kinds of different conferences and topics, and reading as
Huh.
well. Yeah.
Huh. Where will you be in a year from now? You can answer that on a personal or business perspective, or both.
Um, where will I be? I'm probably where. What month are we? um, well, geographically, I'd love to be somewhere in Europe, and that would be great. But actually, in terms of business and work stuff, I think for our business, one of the things that we would really love to be doing more of is we're really, both Sean and I are really interested in empowering people within empowering leaders within organizations to build their capacity for leading their groups in participatory ways, collaborative ways, and also around creative problem solving, and things like that. So we want to do even more of helping those leaders build their capacity, whether it's through designing toolboxes for them and training them on how to use them, or coaching them through that. I think we're now at this stage in the business where we already do a lot of facilitating groups ourselves, but I see a lot of leaders who are very hungry for being better facilitative leaders, and being able to lead collaborative processes better themselves,
Hmm.
or being able to and help their group to solve problems without having an external person in the room all the time. So, you know, I think we really want to help now empower those people to do some of that work themselves.
Yeah. And in best case, without sticky notes.
Oh, 100%. The what? Why would you even mention that? Yeah.
Last question. So, how can people find you, and how can people contact you and reach out to you?
Well, I think LinkedIn is always a great place. That's one option. We do have our websites as well. Tractiontoolbox.ca is where you'll find all the kind of tool stuff, but there's also videos and resources and other things on that site. And maybe just even just some inspirations for you. Soon, very soon, watch for it, wait for it. We're going to launch a YouTube channel that will have very practical short videos on different tools and techniques. So, for example, one of the techniques that I'm very passionate about that I think is really effective is storyboarding. So we'll have a series on that and other tools. So that's coming. And if you want to stay in touch around that, then sign up for our newsletter on Traction Toolbox, and we'll keep people posted. LinkedIn is great, and you'll find all my contact information there.
Awesome. Tamara, thank you very much for taking your time and being on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
It was really nice of you to have me. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. You will find the links and resources in the show notes of this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribing to the show on any of the podcasting platforms and give me a review. This will help me to reach more innovators around the world and bring some of you into the show. If you have any question to the guest or want to engage with me, feel free to reach out to me on social media and contact me there. Thanks, and see you in the next episode.